On a bitter winter evening, John stood outside his small cabin on the edge of a frozen forest. The wind howled and snow fell steadily from the gray sky. John had lived alone in the remote northern lands for many years, surviving the cold with hard work and careful planning. His cabin, built with rough-hewn logs and a sturdy door, was his safe haven from the wild elements. That night, as John was closing the door after a long day of chopping wood, he heard a faint, unusual sound. It was not the familiar creak of the wind or the rustle of the trees. Instead, there was a soft, almost pleading whine coming from outside. John paused. In the quiet that followed, he listened closely. The sound came again, a weak cry, followed by the sound of paws crunching in the snow. Curiosity overcame his caution. John stepped to the frosted window and peered out into the dark night. In the weak light of the moon, he saw two figures moving slowly near his door. As his eyes adjusted, he realized that they were not people but wolves. Their fur was matted with snow and their eyes held a strange, sad glimmer, as if they were seeking help. John's heart pounded as he opened the door a crack. The wolves did not growl or bare their teeth. Instead, they looked at him with eyes that seemed to plead for warmth and care. One of the wolves was smaller and limped slightly, while the other appeared larger and more protective. They moved slowly, as if every step was a struggle against the cold. In that moment, John felt both a surge of empathy and a deep sense of mystery. What could drive these wild animals to seek shelter at a human's door on such a freezing night? John invited them inside. He knew that letting wild animals into his home was a risk, yet the sight of their tired, pleading eyes made him unable to refuse. Inside, the cabin was warm, with the soft glow of a fire dancing on the wooden walls. As the wolves stepped in, their breath became visible in the warm air. John offered them a small bowl of water and some meat he had saved for himself. With quiet gratitude, the wolves ate and rested, their eyes never leaving John. After the meal, John sat by the fireplace, deep in thought. He had always been a practical man, used to the harshness of nature and the need for self-reliance. Yet, tonight, something about these wolves touched him. Their suffering and need for compassion stirred an unfamiliar feeling of duty inside him. He decided to care for them until they could regain their strength. As midnight approached, John carefully made a small bed with extra blankets near the fire. He watched as the larger wolf curled protectively around its smaller companion. The peaceful scene was soon interrupted by a strange sound outside, a faint hum of a machine, almost like a distant engine. John frowned and walked to the window. In the deep dark of the snowy night, he saw a pair of strange lights moving slowly along the edge of the forest. His mind raced. In his many years of solitude, John had never seen such lights. Were they from a snowmobile, or something else? The unknown stirred both fear and wonder in him. He felt that there was more to this night than a simple act of kindness to two hungry wolves. John decided he would check on the source of the lights in the morning. For now, he returned to the warmth of his chair by the fire, his thoughts a mix of concern for his new guests and curiosity about the strange lights. The wolves lay down near the fire, their soft breathing filling the quiet room. Before sleep could fully claim him, John's mind wandered to old legends he had heard as a child. Stories told of mysterious visitors and secrets hidden deep within the snowy forests. Though he had always dismissed them as mere fables, tonight, as he watched the wolves' gentle eyes, he wondered if there might be some truth behind those tales. Could these creatures be more than they seemed? Were they sent by some unseen force in the vast, frozen wilderness? John drifted into an uneasy sleep filled with dreams of icy lands, shadowy figures, and a secret waiting to be uncovered. In his dreams, the wolves spoke to him without words, their eyes full of sorrow and hope. The night deepened, and the strange lights outside flickered like distant stars, their meaning hidden by the vast silence of the snow-covered world. As dawn began to break, the first light touched the snowy roof of the cabin. The night's mysteries remained, but a new day had come. John knew that soon he would have to venture out and face the unknown. He also understood that his act of kindness toward the frozen wolves was only the beginning of a journey that would reveal shocking secrets buried in the cold heart of the wilderness. Thus, the story begins, with a simple man, a pair of wounded wolves, and a secret that lies beneath the frozen snow. John's world, once solitary and predictable, was about to change in ways he had never imagined. At dawn, John woke slowly to the soft light of morning filtering through the frosted windows of his cabin. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, remembering the strange lights he had seen the previous night. The memory of the two wolves resting near the fire still warmed him, even as he felt a chill of curiosity and unease about the mysterious glow in the dark. John quietly stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The snow crunched under his boots as he walked around his cabin, checking on the wolves. They still slept soundly by the doorway, their bodies curled together for warmth. The larger wolf lay near the door, while the smaller one rested on a pile of old blankets. Their soft breathing and steady pulse reminded John that his act of kindness had not been in vain. After a few moments of quiet observation, John set off to explore the source of the strange lights he had seen the night before. He walked toward the edge of the forest, where the trees stood tall and bare against the cold sky. The sun was just rising, and its pale rays cast long shadows on the snow. The land was silent except for the crunch of his steps and the occasional gust of wind that sent swirls of snow into the air. As he moved deeper into the forest, John noticed footprints in the soft snow that did not look like those of any animal he knew. They were larger and seemed almost too neat to be from a wild creature. His heart began to beat faster as he followed the tracks. The path led him to a clearing where the ground was clear of snow, as if something or someone had passed through recently. In the middle of the clearing stood a strange, metallic object partially buried in the snow. It shone with a soft, blue light that pulsed slowly, much like the lights John had seen at night. The object looked unlike anything he had ever seen before. Its surface was smooth and curved, and it had markings that glowed faintly in the early light. John stepped closer, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Every instinct in him told him that this was not a natural part of the forest. He reached out a tentative hand to touch the object. The metal was cool and smooth, and as his fingers brushed against it, the blue light brightened for a moment before fading back to its soft glow. John felt a strange vibration running through his hand, as if the object was trying to communicate something. He pulled his hand back quickly, his mind racing with questions. What was this thing? And how had it come to be here, in the heart of his quiet forest? John knew that he could not answer these questions on his own. He decided to return to his cabin and think about the next steps carefully. With the object still fresh in his mind, he retraced his steps through the forest, carefully noting the tracks and the location of the clearing. When he arrived back at the cabin, he closed the door behind him, his mind filled with both wonder and concern. Inside the warm cabin, John sat by the fire with a mug of tea, trying to calm his racing thoughts. The blue light of the object and the soft glow of the mysterious markings danced in his memory. He pulled out an old notebook and began writing down everything he had seen and felt. His handwriting was steady as he described the footprints, the clearing, and the metallic object that seemed to defy explanation. John's thoughts turned to the wolves. He wondered if there was a connection between the strange object and his unexpected guests. Perhaps the wolves had been drawn to the light, or maybe they knew something about it that John did not. He decided that when the time was right, he would try to learn more about the connection between the object and the animals. The idea both thrilled and frightened him. As the day wore on, John repaired to his small workbench in the corner of the cabin, where he kept tools and spare parts for maintaining the old radio. He knew that he could use the radio to call for help or at least to get more information about unusual happenings in the area. He made a few cautious adjustments, wondering if the radio might pick up any signals that matched the blue pulse he had seen in the forest. Every so often, he glanced at the window, half expecting to see the wolves watching him or the blue light returning. The morning passed slowly. The sun climbed higher, and the temperature rose just enough for the snow to begin to melt slightly around the edges of the clearing. John sat back, his eyes still fixed on the small notebook in his hands, filled with questions and possibilities. He knew that his life was about to change in ways he could not yet understand. The forest, the wolves, and the mysterious object had woven a new thread into the fabric of his existence. John resolved that he would return to the clearing that evening, when the sky would darken and the strange blue light might shine again. He would take nothing for granted and be ready for whatever came next. In his heart, he felt that the secret hidden in the frozen wilderness was only beginning to reveal itself, a secret that might hold the key to understanding not only the strange object but also the true nature of the wolves who had chosen his door. As the afternoon turned to evening, John prepared himself to return to the clearing. The day had passed slowly, and his mind was heavy with thoughts about the strange metallic object and its possible connection to the wolves. He secured his worn coat, grabbed his sturdy lantern, and stepped out into the dim light of early dusk. The cold air bit at his cheeks, but John was driven by the need to know more. He walked a familiar path through the forest, the tall, bare trees standing as silent sentinels. The footprints he had seen earlier were still fresh in his memory, and he kept an eye out for any sign of disturbance in the snow. As he approached the clearing, the sky darkened to a deep blue, and the stars began to appear like scattered diamonds on a velvet canvas. John reached the edge of the clearing. The area was quiet except for the soft rustle of the wind through the branches. There, in the center, lay the metallic object. Its smooth, curved surface glowed faintly with a soft blue light. The gentle pulse of the glow seemed to echo the beat of his own heart, steady and slow. He stepped closer, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of snow and silence around it. The object was even more mysterious in the dark. Its markings now shone with a subtle intensity, as if they were trying to speak a secret language. John knelt beside it and ran his fingers lightly over its cool surface. The contact sent a small vibration through his hand, a sensation both strange and oddly comforting. In that moment, a low sound came from the edge of the clearing, a sound that was not quite the howl of the wind, but something more deliberate. John turned his head and saw a pair of eyes reflecting the lantern's light. It was one of the wolves, the larger one that had sought shelter at his cabin. The wolf moved slowly, as if it had been watching John from a distance. Its eyes were calm but filled with a deep sorrow and understanding. John stayed still, his heart pounding, yet he felt no fear. Instead, he felt an odd connection to the animal. The wolf came closer and sat a few paces away from the object. For a long moment, man and beast regarded one another in the silent night. Then, the wolf stepped forward and placed its paw gently against the object. A pulse of blue light spread from the point of contact, lighting up the markings all around it. John gasped softly, and the wolf's ears twitched as if it sensed his reaction. He slowly reached out, not to touch the animal but to feel closer to the strange phenomenon. The blue light now pulsed in a steady rhythm, and the wolf's eyes never left John's. In that silent communication, it seemed to say, "This is important. I am here to help you understand." John took a deep breath, and his mind raced with possibilities. Was the object a relic of a lost technology? Or perhaps a beacon left by someone or something to guide creatures in need? The wolf's behavior suggested a purpose beyond mere chance. The larger wolf then rose slowly and stepped back, as if to give John room. At that moment, a soft, almost musical tone began to fill the clearing, low and gentle, coming from the object itself. The sound was soothing, and as it grew in volume, John felt a warmth spreading through his hands. The blue light grew brighter, and the markings on the surface of the object began to shift and change, as if rearranging themselves into patterns. John could not understand the message, but he sensed that the object was a form of communication, a message from another world or time. The wolf remained at his side, watching as if guarding this secret. John sat on a fallen log and took out his notebook. With trembling hands, he wrote down everything he saw and felt, the gentle vibration, the soft music-like tone, the shifting patterns of light, and the solemn presence of the wolf. He wrote of the connection he felt between himself, the object, and the animal. It was as if the forest was speaking directly to him, inviting him to be part of something greater than his solitary life. Minutes turned to hours as the clearing became a place of quiet revelation. The sound from the object slowly faded, and the blue light softened to a steady, gentle glow. The wolf sat quietly beside John, its eyes warm and reassuring. In that moment, John felt a deep certainty that his life was about to change. The secret held in the object was not meant to be hidden, it was meant to be discovered, and he was the one to uncover it. As the night deepened and the cold grew sharper, John carefully made his way back to his cabin. He left the clearing with the image of the object and the wolf burned in his mind, knowing that this night was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey into the unknown. At dawn, John awoke with the cool light of morning filtering into his small cabin. The memories of the previous night, the glowing object, the gentle music-like tone, and the watchful wolf, still lingered in his mind. He sat on the wooden step outside and took a deep breath of the crisp air, feeling that something important had changed in his quiet life. John walked slowly toward the door where the two wolves had taken refuge the night before. The larger wolf lay near the doorway, its eyes half closed in the soft warmth of the fire that still glowed inside. The smaller wolf, with its tender injury, rested on a pile of old blankets. Their peaceful sleep brought a sense of calm to John, but his thoughts could not rest. He recalled the mysterious pulse of blue light and the shifting markings on the metallic object that awaited him in the forest clearing. After checking that the wolves were safe, John returned to his workbench. He sat with his notebook open and began to review his notes from the night. The lines of description about the strange vibration, the soft tone, and the wolf's quiet presence filled the pages with questions. What did the object mean? Was it trying to send him a message? And how was it connected to the animals that had found their way to his door? John decided that today he would try to learn more. He adjusted the old radio on his desk, hoping that he might pick up any signal that matched the blue pulse he had seen. He tuned slowly through frequencies, but only static filled the room. Still, he left the radio on, believing that perhaps later in the day a faint message might come through. Determined to uncover more clues, John bundled up and set out toward the clearing once again. The path through the forest was familiar now, with the morning sun rising behind the tall, bare trees. Each step in the soft snow felt heavy with expectation. As he neared the clearing, he noticed something new. The area around the metallic object had a thin layer of frost that shimmered in the sunlight, as if it had been touched by something other than the usual cold. John's heart skipped a beat as he stepped into the clearing. The object lay in the center as before, its blue glow now dim in the early light. He knelt and carefully examined the markings. They looked almost like symbols or a language that he had never seen. With careful fingers, he traced one of the smooth curves, and the object responded with a gentle pulse that sent a soft vibration through his hand. At that moment, the larger wolf appeared at the edge of the clearing. It moved slowly, almost reverently, toward the object. The wolf stopped a few feet away and sat down, its head tilted as if listening. John felt a growing connection between the animal and the strange device. The small wolf stirred and joined its companion, both of them watching the object with calm curiosity. John sat on a fallen log and opened his notebook once more. He wrote down every detail, the way the frost sparkled around the object, the precise shape of the markings, and the quiet, steady pulse that seemed to match the beat of his own heart. He wondered if the object was a message from someone or something far away, or if it was a relic of a forgotten time. As the day wore on, the clearing remained quiet except for the soft sounds of nature. The blue light of the object was now only a gentle glow, and the symbols on its surface shifted slowly, almost as if in a silent conversation. John tried to capture every moment with careful notes, sketching the symbols in his notebook. The simple language of the object was mysterious, yet it felt welcoming, as though it were sharing a secret with him. He sat there for what felt like hours, losing track of time, until the sound of a distant engine reached his ears, a sound he had not heard since that strange night. The noise was soft at first, growing gradually louder as it neared the clearing. John's eyes widened with both hope and fear. Had someone else come to search for the source of this mystery? Or was it something else entirely? Quickly, he rose from the log and peered toward the sound. Through the trees, he saw a small light moving slowly across the snow. It was not the bright beam of a car headlight but a soft, diffused glow. His heart raced as he realized that the strange phenomenon was not confined to his small corner of the world, it seemed to be reaching out to him from afar. John knew he must be cautious, yet he also felt an overwhelming need to understand. He closed his notebook and carefully made his way back to his cabin, leaving the clearing and its mysterious message behind for now. As he walked back through the forest, his mind swirled with questions. What did the distant light mean? Who or what was sending it? And how did it connect with the object and the gentle wolves? Inside his cabin, John turned on the radio again, listening intently for any hint of communication. The static continued, but his resolve had grown stronger. He understood that his life was no longer simple or lonely. A secret had been shared with him, a secret woven into the frost and the silence of the wild. And now, he had to find the key to unlock it. John closed his eyes for a moment, knowing that the journey ahead would challenge everything he knew about the world. Yet, he felt ready to face it, guided by the silent language of the object and the unwavering presence of the wolves. The next morning, John awoke with a restless feeling that had grown stronger over the previous night. The memory of the distant, soft light and the mysterious object in the clearing pulled at him. He had spent the night near his old radio, listening to static and waiting for a clear signal, but nothing came. Now, determined to find more answers, he resolved to return to the clearing once again. After a quick breakfast and a final check on the wolves, who still rested peacefully near the cabin's door, John dressed warmly, taking his lantern, notebook, and a small toolkit. He stepped out into the cold morning air, his breath forming small clouds as he set off along the familiar path through the snow-covered forest. The journey to the clearing was quiet but for the crunch of his boots in the fresh snow. The trees stood like silent guardians, their branches bare and dusted with frost. As John walked, his mind replayed the events of the last few days, the strange blue glow of the object, the soft musical tone, and the calm presence of the wolves. He wondered if the object held secrets that might explain why these animals had come to him in the first place. When John reached the clearing, he saw that the metallic object lay in its usual place. Its smooth surface still emitted a gentle blue glow, though now it appeared steadier, as if it had settled into a quiet rhythm. The markings on its surface continued to shift slowly, almost like a hidden language that John could not decipher. Sitting near the object were the two wolves, their eyes fixed on it with a mixture of curiosity and reverence. John approached slowly, careful not to disturb the peaceful scene. He sat on a fallen log at the edge of the clearing and opened his notebook once more. Today, he decided, he would try a different approach. He examined the object carefully with his eyes and fingers, noting every detail. As he traced one of the smoother curves with his fingertip, the object vibrated faintly beneath his touch, and its glow pulsed in time with his heartbeat. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, unexpectedly, the larger wolf stepped forward and rested its paw on the object. John watched, transfixed, as the blue light brightened around the wolf's paw, sending a ripple of light across the markings. The animal's eyes closed for a moment, and when it opened them again, they shone with an intensity that seemed almost human. At that moment, the soft hum that John had heard before grew slightly louder, filling the clearing with a low, almost comforting melody. The sound was not loud enough to startle, yet it carried a sense of purpose. John's heart pounded as he tried to understand what it meant. Was the object communicating with the wolves? Or perhaps, was it trying to speak directly to him? John took out his small toolkit and retrieved a few basic instruments, a simple magnifying glass and a set of metal probes he had fashioned over the years. He carefully placed them on a flat stone near the object. With cautious determination, he attempted to measure the vibrations and the subtle changes in the blue light. The readings were strange and did not match any earthly technology he knew. The instruments beeped softly in irregular patterns, as if trying to relay a message beyond John's understanding. While John worked, the wolves remained quietly at his side, their calm presence giving him strength. He wrote down every observation in his notebook, hoping that the details might later help him piece together the puzzle. The symbols on the object, the rhythmic pulsing of the blue light, and the wolves' behavior all hinted at a connection that went deeper than mere chance. The soft melody from the object began to form a pattern, a series of tones that repeated in a slow, deliberate cadence. John felt a spark of hope that he might be able to decode it. He hummed along softly, matching the rhythm as best as he could. In that moment, he felt a strange unity with nature, as if the object, the wolves, and even the forest around him were parts of one great, mysterious whole. Time seemed to slow down as John continued his careful study. He knew that he was standing at the edge of something much larger than his simple life in the woods. The object was not just a relic or a stray piece of metal, it was a message, a bridge between the wild and a secret that had been hidden in the frozen wilderness for far too long. By mid-afternoon, as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, John reluctantly closed his notebook. He packed up his instruments, leaving the object and the wolves undisturbed. With one last look at the shimmering blue glow, he promised himself that he would return soon with more ideas on how to unlock its mystery. John started his journey back to the cabin, his mind buzzing with the possibilities of what he had witnessed. The connection between the object and the wolves had deepened his resolve. He felt that answers were close at hand, answers that might not only reveal the purpose behind the strange artifact but also shed light on the true nature of the wild creatures that had chosen him for this unexpected role. That night, after returning to his cabin, John could not sleep. His mind was full of the day's discoveries. The strange blue object, its soft melody, and the way the wolves had reacted all pressed on his thoughts. He sat at his small wooden table, the notebook open before him, and reviewed every detail he had recorded. The symbols on the object, the steady pulses of light, and the unusual readings from his tools all pointed to something beyond his simple understanding of nature. John knew that answers might lie in careful observation. He decided that tomorrow, he would stay at the clearing from dusk until midnight. He would record every sound, every change in the object's glow, and every movement from the wolves. He hoped that by spending more time there, he could catch the hidden message that seemed to be whispered by the artifact. Before retiring for the night, John took one last look at the door. Outside, the wind rattled the windowpanes, and the snow lay deep and undisturbed. The memory of the wolves, their calm yet intense eyes, stayed with him as he finally drifted into a restless sleep filled with visions of blue light and distant voices. The following afternoon, John prepared his small camp near the clearing. He carried extra blankets, a portable recorder, and his notebook. Leaving his cabin behind, he walked along the familiar path until the tall trees and open snow brought him once again to the place where the mysterious object lay. The two wolves were already there, waiting in their usual spot. They sat quietly as if they knew what was coming. John set up his recorder on a flat stone near the object and sat down on the snow, keeping his eyes on both the strange metal and the wolves. As the day slowly faded into twilight, the sky turned a soft purple, and the forest grew hushed. John opened his notebook and began to write, describing the gentle change in the air, the soft whisper of the wind, and the slow, steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. At first, nothing unusual happened. The object maintained its soft blue glow and the wolves watched quietly. But as the last light of day surrendered to darkness, the object began to change. Its glow deepened, and the shifting symbols on its surface seemed to move more rapidly, as if reacting to the approaching night. The soft melody that John had heard earlier began again, low and measured. He could now clearly hear it, recorded by his device, a series of tones that repeated in a gentle pattern. John leaned forward and listened carefully. The sound was not random, it was as if the object was speaking in a language of light and sound. He hummed along with the melody, trying to match the rhythm. The larger wolf moved closer, and its eyes shone with a quiet understanding. The smaller wolf rested near its companion, its injured leg now appearing a bit steadier under the soft blue illumination. Time passed slowly. John scribbled notes, comparing the melody to the patterns he had seen on the object. Every few minutes, the blue light pulsed brighter, and the markings rearranged themselves. At one point, John noticed that the sound had a pause, a brief silence that seemed to invite something. His heart raced as he waited, wondering if this silence would bring a new sign. Then, as the silence stretched for a moment, a soft chime echoed from the object. The sound was clear and resonant, and it filled the clearing with a feeling of calm. In that instant, the object's blue glow shifted from a steady pulse to a wave of light that rippled over its surface. John watched, spellbound, as the symbols began to form patterns that resembled simple shapes, circles and lines that moved in harmony with the melody. It was then that the larger wolf stood up and slowly walked around the object. John felt that the animal was trying to show him something. The wolf stopped at one side of the metallic surface and gently tapped it with its paw. With that touch, the object responded by emitting a new series of tones, faster than before. The symbols on the object rearranged into a pattern that looked like a map. John's eyes widened as he tried to understand. The pattern hinted at a direction, a route that stretched deep into the forest. John's mind raced with new questions. Was this object a guide? Had it been left as a beacon by someone long ago or by a visitor from beyond? The connection between the wolves and the mysterious object grew stronger by the minute. The animal's behavior suggested that it recognized the message and was urging John to follow the map the symbols had formed. As the night deepened, the soft melody continued and the patterns slowly faded back into the gentle blue glow they had before. The wolves returned to their places, and John, filled with a mix of wonder and determination, recorded every detail in his notebook. He knew that the object had given him a clue, a direction to a secret hidden within the frozen wilderness. Before leaving the clearing that night, John took one final look at the object and the wolves. The secret, now hinted at in a map of shifting symbols, beckoned him to follow its call. With a deep breath and a racing heart, John resolved that the next step of his journey would be to follow the direction implied by the mysterious patterns, even if it meant venturing further into the unknown. John spent a restless night turning over the new clue in his mind. The map-like pattern that had appeared on the mysterious object filled him with a sense of urgency. By the time dawn broke over the frozen forest, he was ready to follow the direction hinted at by the shifting symbols. Before leaving the clearing, John returned to his notebook and carefully reviewed every detail he had recorded. The patterns had suggested a route that led deeper into the woods, beyond the familiar paths he had always known. The two wolves, still resting in their usual spots near the object, watched him with calm and knowing eyes. Their silent presence gave him courage. John packed a small bag with extra food, his notebook, a warm blanket, and the simple toolkit he always carried. With the blue glow of the object still pulsing softly in his memory, he stepped away from the clearing. The forest, shrouded in a light dusting of snow and touched by the early morning light, seemed both welcoming and mysterious. Following the direction indicated by the symbols, John walked slowly along a narrow trail marked by unusual stone formations and broken branches. The forest floor was soft with fresh snow, and every step left a clear imprint behind him. The trees, tall and bare, formed a dark corridor through which only faint sunlight filtered, guiding his way. As he pressed on, John found evidence that he was on the right path. He came upon a series of markings carved into the bark of a large pine tree, simple shapes that resembled the circles and lines he had seen on the object. The carvings were weathered by time, yet they clearly echoed the pattern he now carried in his memory. With a steady hand, he made a note in his notebook. These signs confirmed that the route was not random, but a trail left by someone or something long ago. The trail led John through a narrow passage between clusters of trees, where the air grew colder and the silence deeper. Occasionally, he caught sight of movement in the corner of his eye, a flicker of white among the trees, or a soft rustle in the snow. At times, he thought he saw one of the wolves trailing behind him at a distance, always watching but never interfering. Their presence, though subtle, comforted him as he ventured further into the unknown. After several hours of careful walking, John reached a small clearing that felt different from all the others he had passed. In this clearing, the snow was undisturbed and the ground lay smooth as glass. At the center of the clearing was a large, ancient stone, half buried in snow and marked with symbols similar to those on the metallic object. The stone glowed faintly with a blue light that pulsed in gentle rhythm with his own heartbeat. John approached the stone slowly, his heart thumping with a mix of fear and excitement. The stone's surface was rough and cold, yet its markings were smooth and strangely familiar. He placed his hand against the stone and felt a soft vibration travel up his arm. The sensation was gentle, like a welcome from an old friend. In that moment, he understood that the stone was part of the same message as the object he had found earlier. He sat down on a nearby rock and opened his notebook once again. With careful strokes, he copied the symbols from the stone, comparing them to the patterns he remembered from the mysterious device. It became clear that the stone was meant to serve as a guide, a marker along a greater path that led to a secret hidden deep within the wilderness. A sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it soft whispers of the past. John closed his eyes, feeling the ancient energy of the place. When he opened them, the stone's blue light had grown stronger, and the symbols seemed to shimmer with life. In that moment, the quiet of the clearing was broken only by the sound of his own breathing and the distant call of a lone bird. John realized that he was not alone on this journey. The forest itself was alive with secrets, and the path he was following was meant to lead him to a long-forgotten truth. The signs on the stone had given him direction, and now he understood that his next step was to search for more clues along this trail, a trail that might reveal why the wolves had come to him, and what role he was meant to play in the mystery of the frozen wilderness. With determination in his heart and the ancient stone as his guide, John rose and prepared to continue along the hidden trail. The day was still young, and the path ahead promised more wonders and challenges. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the silent strength of the forest, he felt ready to face whatever secret lay waiting in the depths of the cold, endless wild. John continued along the hidden trail, the path winding deeper into the dark forest. The snow grew thicker underfoot, and the tall trees stood silent and watchful as he pressed on. The ancient stone he had discovered earlier now seemed to be only the first sign of a larger mystery. Every step filled him with a mix of hope and quiet dread, as if he were walking into a secret kept for many years. Not far from the clearing with the glowing stone, John noticed a strange structure rising among the trees. At first, he thought it might be a natural rock formation, but as he drew nearer he saw that it was built by human hands long ago. The building, partly buried in snow and ice, had smooth metal walls and strange markings similar to those on the object and the stone. Its surface reflected the soft blue light that seemed to come from deep within it, and faint symbols glowed along its edges. John paused at a safe distance, his heart pounding. He had never seen anything like this in the forest. The building looked old, almost forgotten, as if it had been abandoned for decades. Yet, it emitted a gentle light that reminded him of the message he had already received. The wolves that had followed him for so long stopped at the edge of the clearing near the structure. The larger wolf sat down, its eyes fixed on the building as if it knew something about it. With cautious determination, John stepped closer. The cold wind whispered through the trees as he reached out and touched the smooth metal of the wall. The surface was cool to the touch, and when he ran his fingers over the strange markings, he felt a soft vibration, much like what he had experienced with the earlier object. A series of lights along the wall flickered in response, and the symbols seemed to rearrange themselves into a pattern that John could not yet decipher. He took out his notebook and wrote down every detail. The pattern on the wall was different from the one on the stone, but there was a clear similarity, a language of circles, lines, and gentle pulses of blue. The recording in his simple toolkit had also picked up a soft hum from the structure, a sound that echoed the low melody he had heard in the clearing. John wondered if this building was part of a larger network, a message left behind by someone or something that had come long before him. The wolves, as if sensing the importance of the moment, stayed close by. The larger wolf moved forward and gently sniffed the door of the building. It looked as if the animal was inviting John to explore further. With a deep breath, John found a door that was partly open. He pushed it slowly, careful to make as little noise as possible. Inside, the space was dimly lit by the same blue glow that filled the outside walls. The room was empty, but every surface was covered with more of the mysterious symbols and faint lines of light. John walked into the room, his eyes adjusting to the soft illumination. The air was cool and carried a hint of ozone, as if electricity had long since passed through these halls. He could make out panels on the walls and a central console that looked too advanced for a simple cabin out in the wild. The console's surface pulsed with a steady rhythm, matching the heartbeat he had felt earlier in the clearing. It was clear that this was not a mere relic of the past but part of a system, a network of messages waiting to be understood. In the silence, the sound of his boots on the cold floor was the only noise. The larger wolf followed him, its steps slow and careful, while the smaller one stayed near the doorway, watching. John felt an unexpected kinship with the creature. In that moment, the building felt less like a cold, abandoned place and more like a place of answers, answers that might explain the connection between the glowing object, the ancient stone, and the wolves that had come to him. John approached the console and carefully examined it. There were no switches or buttons in plain sight, only a smooth surface that seemed to respond to his touch. As he pressed his hand lightly against it, a soft hum filled the room, and the blue lights on the walls grew brighter. The symbols began to move again, forming images of a great expanse of land, deep forests, and a scattered network of similar structures. John realized that the map he had seen earlier might be a part of this larger network, guiding those who were meant to find it. A surge of determination filled him. The building was a guidepost, a message meant to lead him, and perhaps others, to a secret hidden in the frozen wilderness. John quickly scribbled down his observations in his notebook. He knew that he had uncovered a piece of a much larger puzzle, one that connected nature, lost technology, and the wild spirit of the wolves. As he stepped back outside, the wind seemed to carry whispers of old memories. The wolves watched him with gentle eyes, as if to say they were ready to continue the journey with him. John felt that he now held the key to unlocking the secret, a secret that could change the understanding of the world around him. With the mysterious structure behind him and the silent promise of new clues ahead, John set his sights on the next part of the trail, ready to follow the map that fate had placed before him. John left the mysterious structure with a heavy heart but a determined mind. The building had given him many clues, a network of symbols, maps of hidden places, and hints of a secret that stretched far beyond his quiet corner of the forest. As he stepped back into the cold air, the blue glow of the structure faded behind him, replaced by the pale light of early evening. He retraced the narrow trail that had led him to the ancient stone and the structure. The forest was quieter now, and the deep silence was interrupted only by the soft crunch of snow under his boots. In the distance, he could hear the gentle murmur of a stream, a sound that reminded him of the life hidden within the frozen land. His thoughts raced as he considered the pieces of the puzzle he had gathered. The glowing object, the stone, and the structure were all connected, forming a network of messages left behind by those who had come before. But what was the purpose of these messages, and who had left them? John recalled the map-like patterns that the object had shown him. In his notebook, he had carefully copied down the symbols and traced a rough route that seemed to lead toward a distant ridge. That ridge, he believed, would hold the next key to understanding the secret hidden in the frozen wilderness. With the wolves still by his side, their calm eyes following his every step, he decided that his next task was to reach that ridge before nightfall. The larger wolf led the way along a narrow, winding path that snaked between clusters of snow-laden trees. The smaller wolf padded quietly close behind, its injured leg seeming steadier than before. As they moved deeper into the forest, John noticed subtle signs along the trail, small carvings on tree trunks and clusters of frost arranged in unusual shapes. Each sign seemed to confirm that he was on the right path, guiding him towards something important. The sun sank lower in the sky, painting the snow in hues of orange and pink. The air grew colder, and John pulled his coat tighter around him. Despite the chill, a warm feeling of purpose filled him. He pressed on until the trees began to thin, and the forest opened onto a wide plateau. There, rising in the distance, was the ridge, a series of low hills outlined against the twilight sky. On the slope of the ridge, John saw more symbols etched into large boulders. They glowed faintly with blue light, matching the patterns he had seen on the object and the structure. He stopped for a moment, breathing deeply and letting the beauty and mystery of the scene wash over him. This plateau, untouched by modern life, felt sacred, a hidden place where ancient secrets lay buried beneath snow and stone. John carefully noted the position of the symbols in his notebook, convinced that they formed part of a larger message. They appeared to be directions, guiding him toward a location on the ridge where the message would be revealed. Before John could explore further, a low rumble of sound reached his ears, a sound that grew louder and more insistent with each passing minute. The ground beneath him vibrated slightly, and he glanced around in alarm. From the far side of the plateau, a thick cloud of dust and snow rose as if stirred by unseen forces. At first, he thought it might be a storm, but the sound was too rhythmic and focused. It was coming from a group of vehicles or machines moving steadily toward him. John's heart pounded. The appearance of any human presence in this remote area was unusual. He looked toward the source of the sound and saw a line of lights cutting through the twilight. These lights moved in a formation that suggested careful planning, not the haphazard arrival of strangers. Unsure of what to expect, John quickly hid behind a large boulder, his eyes straining to see through the gathering dusk. The line of lights approached slowly, and soon John could make out figures moving in the distance. They wore warm clothing and carried equipment that glinted in the fading light. Were they part of the same mystery that he had been unraveling, or did they have a different purpose entirely? His mind raced with possibilities. Had his secret network been discovered by others? Or were these people meant to be allies who also sought the truth behind the symbols? John knew that he could not risk exposure. With careful steps, he crept down the slope, keeping to the shadows and out of sight. The larger wolf stayed close to him, its eyes alert as if it too sensed the approaching presence. Every now and then, John listened intently as the sound of the mysterious vehicles grew louder, their engine hum mixing with the whisper of the wind. As he moved slowly away from the path, John reached a safe distance behind a clump of trees. From his hidden vantage point, he watched as the strangers passed through the plateau, stopping briefly near one of the large boulders covered in blue symbols. They gathered around, discussing in low voices and examining the markings carefully. John felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. Their actions suggested they might share his interest in the ancient message, but he could not be sure of their intentions. With the strangers now moving on and disappearing into the deepening night, John knew that his journey had taken a new turn. The appearance of these people confirmed that he was not the only one drawn to the secret of the frozen wilderness. The symbols, the wolves, and the mysterious structures were part of a greater story, a story that now included others. John closed his notebook, his mind filled with more questions than answers. The next step on his journey lay ahead on the ridge, and soon he would have to confront the truth hidden there. Resolved and with his heart full of both hope and caution, John prepared to continue his trek toward the ridge, the blue symbols lighting his way in the dark, and the silent bond with the wolves giving him strength. John continued up the ridge as the night deepened around him. The blue symbols etched on the large boulders guided his steps in the darkness. The cold wind stung his cheeks, but he pressed on, his resolve strong and his mind filled with questions. The silent bond with the wolves, who trotted close behind him, gave him courage. He knew that this final stretch of the trail held the answers he had been seeking all along. As he reached the top of the ridge, John came upon a wide, open clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a large structure unlike anything he had seen before. It was not as old as the abandoned building he had discovered earlier, yet its design was equally mysterious. The walls of the structure were built of a smooth, pale metal that shimmered under the light of a rising moon. Strange symbols, very similar to those on the metallic object and the stone, were engraved along its surface. The entire place pulsed with a gentle blue glow that filled the clearing with a calm, otherworldly light. John's heart pounded as he approached the structure. The wolves slowed their pace and waited near him, their eyes reflecting the soft luminescence. At the entrance, there was a heavy door that appeared to be sealed for a long time. Using a steady hand, John pushed the door open. It creaked slowly, revealing a dimly lit interior that stretched back into a long corridor. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of metal and old memories. The corridor walls were lined with panels that displayed more of the mysterious symbols. As John stepped forward, the panels lit up one by one, forming a sequence of images. They showed vast, frozen landscapes much like the one he had known all his life, and then they showed images of people and animals working together in harmony. In the center of one of the panels, a great symbol appeared, a circle intersected by a line, surrounded by smaller shapes. John felt a powerful pull as he stared at it, as if the symbol held the key to the secret of the frozen wilderness. The soft hum that had accompanied the mysterious object and the stone now filled the corridor. John followed the sound, which led him to a large chamber at the heart of the structure. There, he found a circular room with a domed ceiling. In the middle of the room stood a platform with a device that resembled the metallic object he had first discovered. Its blue light was bright and steady, and the symbols on its surface flowed smoothly like water. At the edge of the platform, a row of screens displayed data in a language that John did not understand, but the images were clear. They showed the forest, the ridge, and many similar structures scattered across the land. There were also pictures of people, simple, kind faces that seemed to smile in quiet approval. The screens then shifted to show the wolves, their eyes filled with trust and quiet determination. John realized that this chamber was a control center, left behind by a group of people who had once worked in the wilderness. They had built these structures as beacons of hope and messages of unity between humans and nature. The device on the platform was a communicator, meant to share knowledge and preserve a way of life that balanced technology with the wild. The wolves, it appeared, were not simply wild creatures but had been chosen to guide the guardians of this secret message. Their arrival at John's cabin had been no accident, it was destiny. A gentle voice, soft and clear as if carried by the wind, filled the chamber. It spoke words that John did not fully understand, but the meaning was clear. The message was one of unity, compassion, and respect for nature. The voice explained that the structures were built to help humanity learn from the natural world, to bring balance in times of hardship, and to ensure that the ancient wisdom was never lost. John's simple life in the wilderness, marked by hardship and solitude, was being gently transformed into something greater. A role as a keeper of this secret legacy. Tears welled in John's eyes as he listened, filled with a mix of awe and gratitude. The wolves nuzzled him gently as if sharing their silent joy. In that quiet chamber, John understood that the secret was not meant to bring fear or chaos, but to awaken the forgotten bond between humans and the wild. With a calm heart and renewed purpose, John stepped away from the platform. He knew what he must do next, to share this legacy, to guide others with kindness and wisdom, and to protect the balance between nature and technology. As he left the chamber, the blue glow slowly faded into the soft light of dawn, and the first rays of sun began to warm the frozen land. John emerged from the structure, the wolves at his side, ready to carry the secret into a new day, a day where compassion and respect for the wild would shape the future of both man and nature.